Hi everyone, welcome back to Creatively Expressive. My name is Amy and today I'm going to show you how I made a Nightmare Before Christmas Sally bust using just cardboard, a styrofoam ball, and a couple of wooden plaques. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and leave me a quick comment in the comment section below. Alright, let's jump right in. To start, I'm using a bust form that I made out of cardboard and paper mache. If you'd like to see how I built that, check out my Jack Skellington DIY bust video. I'll have the link in the description box below and pinned in the comments section. For Sally's head, I'm using a 3.8-inch styrofoam ball. I also made a face template that fits perfectly to size, which really helps keep her proportions right. I printed out a few copies of my Sally face template. Then cut one out and used an X-Acto knife to remove the eyes. Next, I taped the paper face to the styrofoam ball and traced inside the eye shapes with a Sharpie marker. Using one of my clay tools, I carved around the trace lines to create shallow indentations. This gives me a guide for where her eyes will go once I add the clay. Now I'm rolling out a flat piece of Sculpey Air Dry Clay. To help it stick to the styrofoam, I brushed on a thin layer of Elmer's school glue, then wrapped the clay sheet over the ball. I smoothed it out with my hands and rolled it gently on the table to even out the surface. If you get any air bubbles, just pop them with a pin and smooth over the spot with a little water on your finger. Once it's all covered, I set it aside to dry while I moved on to the bust form. I started by marking the center of the dowel neck on the bust form so I could find the midpoint. Then I lightly sketched out the shape of Sally's V-neck shirt. Since Sally's a girl, she needs a bit of a bust. So I rolled 2 even pieces of paper mache clay and pressed them into shape. I also rolled a small sausage piece of clay to add a gentle slope to her shoulders. Once I liked the shape, I let the paper mache clay dry completely before moving on. Then I covered the entire bust in lightweight spackling to smooth out the surface, let it dry for 30 minutes, and sanded it smooth. Next, I glued the bust to its wooden base using a mix of Titebond Quick and Thick glue and hot glue for extra hold. Then I rolled out some more Sculpey Air Dry Clay and began covering the bust form. First the back section, trimming off extra clay. and then the front section. Using a clay knife and a bit of water, I blended the seams together so it looked like one smooth piece. Once that was done, I started adding Sally's stitch details. I used my X-Acto knife to cut a scar down the center of Sally's chest and along her neckline, then deepen those cuts slightly with my clay tools. To create the stitches, I poke small holes along each scar. Then I rolled out very thin snake-like pieces of clay. These are the little threads. I pressed one end of the clay into a hole, cut it at the next, and smoothed it down with a bit of water. And I just kept repeating that process until all of her stitches were in place. Once finished, I let the bust dry overnight. After everything dried, I used hot glue to attach Sally's head to the bust. While drying, I noticed a few cracks in the clay, totally normal with air dry clay. To fix them, I rolled out small snake pieces again, dampened the cracked area with a little water, and pressed the fresh clay right over the cracks. Then I smoothed it with my clay tools and a damp brush until it blended perfectly. Next, I rolled out another sheet of clay for Sally's shirt. I pressed it to the front of the bust and cut out a V shape at the top to create her neckline. Then I carefully folded up the edges of the V to make them look like tattered ripped fabric. I flattened the sides with my fingers in water so the clay blended seamlessly into the bust form. For the stitching detail on her shirt, I poked a few holes along the neckline and rolled more tiny clay threads to press into place, just like the ones on her chest. To finish the top of the shirt, I added a thin curved strip of clay around the back of her neck to look like a collar. I decided to retrace her eyes onto the clay-covered ball since my original carving lines were hard to see. I taped my face template back on and used a Dremel tool to carve out her eye shapes. Then I rolled out a thin sheet of clay and pressed it over the front of her face and trimmed away the excess from her eye sockets. After smoothing the edges, I rolled 2 small clay balls for her eyeballs, glued them into place, and smoothed the edges again. For her lips, I rolled a tiny ball of clay, flattened it, pinched the ends, and shaped a soft cupid's bow at the top. I scored both the lips and the face so they'd stick better, then pressed them into place with a little water. Next came the nose, a small triangle of clay that I shaped and blended into her face. At this point, I'll be honest, she looked a little weird, kinda like a cyborg, but I just kept going. After adding scars around her mouth and forehead and poking new holes for stitches, I realized she needed a chin. So I rolled a small piece of clay, shaped it, and blended it under her mouth. That made such a difference. She was really starting to look like herself. For her eyelashes, I cut 16 small pieces of thick fishing line, 8 for each eye. Then I rolled out small flat clay circles, cut them into crescent shapes, and attached them above her eyes as eyelids. While the clay was still damp, I dipped each piece of the fishing line into glue and pressed it into the top of her eyelids for her lashes. To make Sally's pupils, I rolled out a small flat sheet of clay and used a round frosting tip to cut 2 small circles. I dampened the circles with a bit of water and stuck them to her eyes. It finally started to look like Sally. I needed to make the shape of Sally's head even, so I rolled out a sheet of clay and used water to attach it to the backside of her head. I cut off the excess clay, then used my clay knife, water, and my fingers to blend the 2 halves of the head together. I let the head dry overnight, and then I sanded any rough spots on Sally's head and torso smooth. Sally needs a more substantial neck, so I'm going to roll out a sheet of clay, cut it to size, and use some Elmer's glue to attach it to the dowel neck. Then I'll use my clay tools and some water to blend the clay neck together with Sally's head and bust. Now that Sally has a neck, I need to add a scar to her neck. Then I'll poke some holes along the scar so that I can attach clay threads. After I attach the threads to the neck, I'll attach them to her face as well. Once Sally's face was done, I moved on to her hair. I rolled out a big sheet of clay and used my clay tools to carve messy wavy lines to look like strands of hair. Then I dampened both the back of Sally's head and the clay sheet and pressed it into place, wrapping it around the back and pinching it together at the top seam. I trimmed the excess with scissors and shaped her front hairline with an X-Acto knife. To blend the top seam, I smoothed it out with water and marked the center part line down her scalp. Then I added more wavy lines to the back of her hair. Once I was happy with the texture and flow of her hair, I left it to dry overnight. Unfortunately, it cracked. A lot. But I wasn't giving up after coming this far. To fix it, I rolled out flat oblong pieces of clay, dampened the cracked areas, and patched over them. Then I re-sculpted the hair texture lines to blend everything together. This time when it dried, no cracks. Success! Now for the fun part, painting. I started with her hair using the color Flamenco Red mixed with some gloss varnish for shine. I painted the underside and back first, then the top and sides. Next, I painted half of her shirt with the color Golden Sunset with gloss varnish mixed in. On the other half, I mixed peachy pink with a touch of chestnut to get the slightly muted, dirty pink color, and again added varnish for sheen. I drew swirl patterns on one side of the shirt with a white pencil, then painted over them with the chestnut mixed with varnish. To create Sally's blue skin tone, I mixed Blue Bonnet with white and a little gloss varnish and started painting her face, neck, and chest. I ended up lightening the mix just a bit for that perfect pale blue. For her lips, I went back to the flamenco red. Her eyes got a base of white mixed with varnish, then black pupils and eyeliner for that stitched together doll look. I also painted her eyelashes black for definition. Then using that same black paint, I went over the scar lines on her face, neck, and chest, and filled in her mouth and shirt stitches too. The wood base was painted black as well. To bring her to life, I mixed a slightly darker blue color by adding Blue Bonnet to the color that I had mixed up for her skin, and then painted over the stitches on her face so they'd stand out softly against her skin. Then for the stitches on her neck and chest, I mixed the color Blue Bonnet and Admiral Blue together. Then I added a little blue chalk shading around and under her eyes to give her that tired, sweet Sally expression. And finally for the base, I rubbed a bit of gold rub and buff over the black paint, just enough to let some of that darkness show through. And that's it, my Sally bust is complete. I absolutely love how she turned out. This project took a lot of patience, a few repairs, and some trial and error, but I'm so happy I didn't give up. If you enjoyed this video, a few free and easy ways to help support my channel are to subscribe if you haven't already, give this video a thumbs up, leave me a quick comment or even just an emoji, and share it with anyone you think might enjoy it. Thanks so much for watching Creatively Expressive. See you next time, and happy crafting!